So now let's talk about trim and extend sketches. So the trim tool is on the sketch tab right here. Select the trim entities tool and we now have several options which you can use to trim away geometries. I'll start with power trim. Now using this power trim, you can make a freehand sketch and anything that crosses the freehand sketch will be trimmed. So it works kind of like this. Click at a point and hold your cursor. Don't let it go, and now move your mouse. So left click, hold your cursor, and now when you hover it right above any geometry, it will just trim it. So that's it. Now before I do that, I'll just move one step back. I'll press Ctrl Z and I'll start it again. So I'll go to trim entities, and there was an option which was checked already, which is keep trimmed entities as construction. I'll just uncheck this for now. So before you do that, just make sure these two options are unchecked. We'll get to this in a moment. So I'll go to power trim again, left click, hold your cursor and move it. And there we are. We can now easily trim it kind of like this. Now, if you accidentally trimmed something that you don't want to, then move your cursor back to this red dot and it will undo that trim. So all you need to do is just move back to the red dot and it will undo trim. Let go your cursor and there we have the trimmed geometry. Now the next one here is corner trim. Now using corner trim, you can create these kind of corners and everything outside that corner will be trimmed. For example, here we have, well, several of these intersecting lines. Let's for a moment assume that we want to make a corner here and we only want to keep these two lines. We want to trim away all these extra lines. For that, select corner, click on this part of the line and this part, and there we are. We now have a corner. Everything outside that corner is now trimmed. You can do the same here as well. So here also we have a corner. So just select. We now have a corner. Everything outside is trimmed. I'll press Ctrl Z a couple of times to just get back to the original drawing. Let's go to trim entities again and I'll select trim away inside. Okay, in this case, we just need to start with the boundaries. So you can select the boundaries first and then everything inside that boundary will be trimmed. So let's start with maybe this boundary and then this one, and now make a big box like this and everything inside the boundary will be trimmed. So this one is a quick way of trimming objects with respect to selected boundaries. Now the next method is also similar. So again, press Ctrl Z, trim entities, and this one is trim away outside. So it is kind of opposite of this option. So here also you need to start with the boundaries. So select the boundaries and now make a big box including everything. So just make sure that this box encloses everything in your drawing that you want to trim outside the boundary, of course. And there we are. So everything outside the boundary, which was inside this selection box, is now trimmed. Again, I'll press Ctrl Z to get back to the original drawing. Now let's go to trim entities and finally let's talk about trim to closest. Now using this option, you can trim the objects just like power trim. But in this case, instead of making a free sketch, we just need to click on the objects. So just click on the object and SolidWorks will trim it up to the next available boundaries. So it's kind of like power trim, but you just don't need to make a freehand sketch in this case. So once again, I'll press Ctrl Z a couple of times to get back to the original drawing. Now let's go to trim entities one more time and let's see what these options are. So there are two check boxes. The first box will ensure that every trimmed geometry is converted into a construction geometry. Now in this case, let's assume that we want to convert this line and this line into a construction geometry. So instead of using the construction geometry, you can directly trim it like this. So when I'm trimming it, it's actually not trimming these lines, rather it's just converting it into construction geometry. There we are. So now these things are converted into construction geometry. So that's it. Here you can see it in more detail. So that's the construction geometry. You can also click here, here, and you can just convert as many geometries as you want into construction geometry. So it is kind of like converting anything into construction geometry using trim command. Now I'll uncheck this option, and finally we have this option, which is ignore trimming of construction geometry. Now as the name suggests, when you select this option and trim anything, SolidWorks will ignore every construction geometry and it will trim the normal geometry. So I've got this power trim selected and this one is also checked. Now you can see that we have several of these construction lines here. Let's just trim it completely using this free hand sketch, and there we are. So it just trimmed away everything except for the construction geometry, and that's what this option is all about. So when you keep this one selected, SolidWorks will ignore every construction geometry in your drawing. Let's now click OK and press Ctrl Z. Now the opposite of trim is extend, and using extend tool, well, you can increase the size of any object up to the next boundary. So extend tool is right underneath the trim tool. It's here. Now I will select this line here and it will extend it up to the next boundary again. So as long as you have a boundary, SolidWorks will extend it. If it finds nothing to extend, well, it will show you this warning. So it just cannot be extended further. But if you make a boundary once again, maybe I'll just extend it further like this, and I'll try extending it one more time. It will now again extend it up to the next boundary. Now you can not only extend the straight lines, but you can also extend ellipses, arcs, and other geometries. So I'll go to extend, and here I'll just click here and look at this. It will now extend this elliptical geometry into its same path. So now this is extending it right along this ellipse. So that's the extend tool. Press escape to exit out of this tool, and this was all about the trim and extend tools in SolidWorks.